Hi, my friends.
Hi.
How are you guys?
Hey
Great.
guys.
Long
Hey
time no
Norah.
see.
I know. It's
Yes,
been too
we haven't
long.
been
That's
here,
true.
yes, for a couple of weeks, but today we're getting back to the studies. The vacation time is over.
Oh, yes.
Um, we're on day 16 in this beautiful study. Paul and Stephen, we're studying this beautiful book that was psychographed by our beloved Chico Xavier. We have loads of interesting things to talk about tonight. But before we start properly talking about the book, our great friend Norah will, as always, bring us some prayer so we can get more focused, relaxed, and then we can start without no longer ado. Okay?
All right. Dear Mother, Father God, we thank you so much and come with a grateful heart for this beautiful opportunity to be here tonight or on demand, studying together, connecting inspirations, connecting in Christ love and consciousness to learn, to experience different ways, different angles to understand the literature, and most importantly, that we practice all our learnings and our teachings in our daily lives. We say the Hail Mary prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. And with this beautiful prayer, we kindly ask permission to begin. And so be it.
Beautiful, dear. Thank you so much. Guys, I just want to chat with you. Are you guys listening to me in a
Yes.
clear sound? Okay, great. Because I changed the mics tonight and I was not that sure. So thank you guys. So we're going to do it as we always do. We're going to start talking in this more literal way of the book in this first part. And after that, we're going to have a more um, a free conversation about what we have had read and have to say. Okay, as always. So we are in the second part of the book. We in these 15 days that have passed have talked about a lot about Saul of Tarsus, that now is almost a wholly different man. We saw that he still have a couple of difficult things in his character, that he as a man who was full of pride was carrying with him for all his life. But we are seeing that he's fighting a lot, and in this new way with Christ, things are getting really harsh for Saul of Tarsus. So we are tonight talking about a moment when he was alone, without family, without friends, without money, and not long before his decision to leave Jerusalem to track down Ananias, he would not have hesitated to order the death of anyone who would have foretold the future awaiting him. Of course, we knew in these 15 days who he was. His life, his plans had been transformed down to the smallest detail. What to do now? What if he could not find Gamaliel's help in Palmyra as he had hoped? He considered to the extent of all those problems unfolding before him. Everything was so hard. He was like a man who had lost his family, his country, his home. Profound despair threatened to invade his heart. Suddenly, however, he remembered Christ, and the recollection of the glorious vision filled his desolated spirit with comfort. Trusting much more in the one who had reached out to him than in his own strength, he sought to calm his inner anguish, bringing repose to his weary body. This is very, very pretty. Late in the morning of the next day, he went out onto the street, worried and anxious. Following the information he had received, he stopped at the door of an inviting building fronted with large shops. He asked for Hezekiah and was immediately met and amicably greeted by an elderly man with a kind and respectable smile. He was Gamaliel's brother, who took right away who took him right away to the recently arrived countryman from afar and engaged him in comforting conversation, tactfully seeking to garner news concerning the venerable Rabbi of Jerusalem. Saul obtained the necessary details from his brother, who showed profound interest. He said, "My brother," concerned, he was very concerned, "has seemed very different ever since he arrived in Palmyra. It is possible that the move from Jerusalem had some influence on such a profound transformation. The difference in social environment, the change in customs, the climate, lack of the usual work, all this may have contributed to harming his health." It is really interesting because every time somebody converts to Christianity, all those old friends, they think they're ill. "How so?" asked Sal, without disguising his concern. "Well, he spends days after days in an abandoned hut that I own in the shade of some date palms in one of the many oases around here. And this, mind you, only to read and ponder some unimportant manuscript that I couldn't understand." He was talking about the gospel. "Moreover, he seems completely disinterested in our religious practices. He lives like an alien to the world. He speaks of visions from heaven and constantly refers to that carpenter who supposedly became the Messiah of our people, living on imaginary things and usual dreams. Sometimes I observe his mental decline with deep sorrow. My wife attributes it to all his advanced age, but I want to believe that it is due completely, or at least mostly, to intensity of his study and long periods of meditation." Gamaliel's brother paused while Saul gave him a penetrating and meaningful look, grasping the condition of the old teacher. After another remark by Saul, Gamaliel's brother continued, "When he is with my family, Gamaliel is treated like a father. Besides, I owe the starting of my life to his immense brotherly dedication. For that very reason, my wife and I have agreed with our children to surround the dear and noble alignment with an atmosphere of peace." Whenever he talks about the religious illusions that excite his mental state, nobody in this house contradicts him. We know that he no longer speaks for himself. His powerful mind has faded away. The star has died out. When I consider these painful circumstances, I thank God for having brought him here so that he can end his days in the warmth of our family's care, free from the scorn that could have perhaps been subjected to him in Jerusalem, where not everybody would be able to understand him and honor his distinguished past. But the city has always venerated him and as an unforgettable master, said Saul, as if he wanted to defend his own sentiments of friendship and admiration. "Yes," said Gamaliel's brother, "with certainty. A man of your intellectual level would be prepared to understand it all. But what about the others? You are, of course, aware of the ruthless persecutions being carried out by the authorities of the Sanhedrin and the temple against the sympathizers of the famous Nazarene carpenter. Palmyra got wind of it, thought, the countless poor countrymen who left Jerusalem in a hurry at the threat of prison and death. Well, it was precisely in connection with that man that Gamaliel displayed the first symptoms of mental weakness. If he were in Jerusalem, that would become of him in his forsaken old age. Of course, many friends like you would be ready to defend him, but the case could take a serious turn and political enemies could emerge demanding severe measures. And we ourselves wouldn't be able to do anything to stabilize the situation because, in reality, In reality, his intensity is peaceful, nearly unnoticeable, and in no way could we possibly side with him on his defense of the criminal whom the Sanhedrin sent to the cross of thieves. Saul felt extremely ill at ease listening to such remarks, now so unjust and superficial in his opinion. He understood the delicate situation and the psychological resources he would have to employ so as not to compromise himself and worsen even more the position of the illustrious teacher. Wanting to change the subject, he asked, "What about the doctors? What is the opinion of the experts?" During his last examination at our instance, it was discovered that besides being disturbed, the esteemed patient is suffering from an unusual organic weakening that is consuming his last vital forces. Saddened, Sal made a few more remarks, and after reconsidering his first impressions regarding Gamaliel's brother, amicable hospitality, he was helped by a servant and went to the place where his old mentor welcomed him with surprise and joy. The formal disciple noticed that Gamaliel was, in fact, displaying symptoms of profound physical weakness. He embraced him affectionately in infinite joy, lovingly kissing his wrinkle and trembling hands. His hair seemed whiter. His complexion, forward with venerable wrinkles, gave the impression of alabaster, reflecting an undefinable peaceness and paleness. They talked at length about their longing and successes in Jerusalem, and also about their friends far away. After these affectionate um, first impressions, they talked at length about other things. And Saul told the elderly teacher of the grace he had received at the gates of Damascus. His voice had the vibrant reflection and inflection of that passion and sincerity he used to impress on his emotions on the days before when he was the great orator. Gamaliel listened to his story with inexpressible wonder. Tears of joy pooled in his lively and serene eyes without falling. The proof filled him with deep consolation. He had not accepted in vain that wise and loving Christ, whom his colleagues had not understood. At the end of his account, Saul of Tarsus also had tears in his eyes. It's so pretty. The kind old man embraced him movingly and held him close to his heart. "Saul, my son," he said joyfully, "I knew it was not mistake. I was not mistaken about the Savior who spoke to me so profoundly in my exhausted old age, though the spiritual light of his gospel of redemption. Jesus had designed to stretch out his loving hands to your devoted spirit. The vision at Damascus will be enough for you to consecrate your entire life to the Messiah's love. It is true that you worked hard for the law of Moses without hesitating to adopt extreme measures in its defense, but the time has come for you to work for the one who is greater than Moses." This is very beautiful. "But I feel so disoriented and confused," murmured Sal, full of trust. "Ever since the event, I have noticed that I have been the object of peculiar and radical changes. Obedient to my completely sincere character, I wanted to begin my work for Christian in Damascus, yet I received a major show of contempt and ridicule from our friends there. I suffered greatly from it. I suddenly found myself without friends, without anyone. Members at the meeting of the way comforted my beating soul with fraternal words." That meeting was so beautiful. "But they were not enough to pay for the bitter disillusionment I was going through. Sadoc himself, who in childhood was my father's pupil, showed me with recrimination and mockery. I wanted to return to Jerusalem, but after the scene at the synagogue in Damascus, I understood that would be waiting for me. What would be waiting for me on the greater scale with the authorities of Sanhedrin and the temple. Of course, the profession of rabbi no longer holds any interest for my sincere spirit because I would be lying to myself. Without work, without money, I found myself in a maze of irresolvable questions without the help of someone more experienced than I. That is why I decided to go into the desert to seek your help. Concluding his appeal with pleading eyes, revealing the tormenting anguish of his soul, he exclaimed, "Beloved teacher, you were always able to find solutions for the good, where my imperfection found nothing but bitter darkness. Help my soul, sunk in pain-filled nightmares. I must serve the one who designed to snatch me from the darkness of evil, but I cannot do without your help during this difficult time in my life." These words were spoken with a profoundly moving inflection. Eyes firm yet illuminated by intense tenderness, the generous old man grasped Sal's hands and spoke movingly. "Let's take a look at these issues in particular so that we can find an adequate solution to all your problems in the light of the teachings now shining their light on us." And after a pause in which Gamaliel seemed to be clarifying the issues, he continued, "You have mentioned the humiliation you experienced in the synagogues in Damascus. However, such examples are clear and convincing. At present, I too am considered a peaceable lunatic in my own circles. In Jerusalem, you saw Simon Peter verified for loving God's poor and giving them shelter. You saw Stephen stoned to death, and who knows what else. Christ himself, the Redeemer of humankind, did not did not escape being martyred on a scornful cross between criminals condemned by the justice of this world. The master's lesson is too great for his disciples to expect political control or wealth in his name. Guys, since we were a couple of weeks without being here, I decided to bring the whole text. And after we all speak a little, we can comment this beautiful literature that Emmanuel Trishiko brought us. Bro, now it's your turn.
Thanks, João. So Saul was listening with a heavy heart, all those words, because he was remembering Stephen, Peter, and many others, recalling all the harsh things he did in the past. Then Gamaliel continued by comparing the incident in Damascus to the exodus of their forefathers, the misery, the slavery, the trials of the desert. Amongst all of that suffering, the water spring in dry, the water spring in dry rock was the gesture of divine watch care all around. And the catch about the desert is that um, the shadow of a palm tree or a cloud can be felt like a blast from heaven. And that's a true and deep experience. Even some Brazilian um, lecturers have experienced the desert, by walking for several days and experiencing the heat under the sun and the shadow and the fresh water. And this experience, this severe suffering in that harsh climate brings a new perspective over every single thing in life and how God is always taking care of us. And all little things that we let just slip from our side. And just like discovering a new land filled with honey and milk, required courage to face the long road for the Hebrews in the past. Living by the gospel requires courage to transform ourselves from within out. In that, there will be people trying to change our focus, to discourage us. There will be obstacles, and including our own weaknesses. But we must keep the eye on the objective, which is knowing the truth and to become free. Um, in this part, to become free through the truth, we have to talk about that at the end. So Gamaliel was already too old at that point. But as for Saul, his energy could be redirected and his life could be simplified. And Gamaliel pointed out that Joshua, Jesus, overcame many difficulties, and he would never be able to do so just by reading sacred texts. He had to smooth the ruts in the road. So that's the hardest job to be done, and that was Jesus the one to accomplish. Gamaliel asked Saul about his profession besides Sanhedrin's persecutor. And Saul revealed his father sent him to learn the job of a weaver in his early days. And Gamaliel displayed great joyfulness and recalled that we must eat our bread by the sweat of our brow, and concluded by pointing out that his youth and modest profession could set him free from the illusion of the titles he earned from a humankind that is mostly unaware of goodness and truth. Saul took Gamaliel's hand and kissed it in a gesture of profound gratitude and humbleness, and affirmed he would become once more a weaver. Gamaliel just patted his shoulder and exclaimed, "May God bless your hopes." Saul revealed great concern about starting to work elsewhere but Palmyra, and for not having financial resources. Gamaliel agreed and added that other problems much more serious, like the Pharisaic intrigues, the doctors of the law, family vanities, all those things could choke the seed planted by Jesus in Saul. So it would be wiser to develop before facing the major obstacles. And Saul asked word, "But what shall I do?" And that's what Norah will answer us.
All right. So let's finish up. So now, Gamaliel, with a lot of tenderness, but also stern, like a father figure, a spiritual mentor, he continues to reaffirm to him that there's going to be changes for him. He's coming from a background of being in the courts and, having a lot of prestige and having a lot of advantages. Now it's going to change. He says, I put my glasses on. I won't tell him that it involves a great rabbi of Jerusalem who intends to exile himself for a while, not for fear of shaming your name or your origin, but because I think it would be useful for you to experience humility and solitude on your new pathway. So this is the new path that Gamaliel tells Saul you're going to take. So we're not going to tell anyone where you're going to be at. All right. And Saul was following along and he was agreeing. What was beautiful was when Gamaliel says, besides, Jesus exemplified all this by remaining in our midst without are being aware of it, which was very, very powerful. So he's going to go to the desert. And it says here that the desert will provide him consolation, work, and silence. He would no longer earn the easy money of undue admiration, but would earn the resources needed for his existence with the added value of overcoming obstacles. Gamaliel was right. And he says here that Saul would seek to reconcile himself with all of those he had offended in the time that he would be in this place. He felt young and he would work for Jesus as long as he had the strength. So, loving the words from his older teacher, um, uh, Gamaliel asked Saul, "Do you have the gospel with you?" And so Saul shows him a little paper, probably a little older, and says, "This is a copy that I was able to get." And so Gamaliel says, "I already have made 3 copies of the gospel without the help of any scribes. So, considering Peter's gift as a holy token of a noble friendship, I want you to have it. Take with you these pages written at the Ways Church as loyal companions in your new endeavors." So, of course, Saul was like, "What did you just say? You're giving me an original copy written by Peter? No, it's okay. I'll take, your copy." But Gamaliel insists and says, "No, it's okay. Instead of abandoning Peter's gift or the Gospels to persons who might not appreciate the value we attribute to it, I prefer to give it to a loyal friend who will cherish its sacred character." So now they continue to talk, and Gamaliel continues to give him more and more advice, right? And this is something very powerful that he says. "In this work, my son, if you encounter misunderstanding and struggle in Jerusalem, do not despair or become dismayed, and do not give up. Since you have surely sown confusion there in people's minds, it is just that you reap the consequences. In every task, however, remember Christ and carry on with your sincere effort. Do not be disturbed by mistrust, slander, and by bad faith. Remember that Jesus overcame all that." And so, of course, Saul is listening to these words and he's really feeling that deep connection with him. So that afternoon, they went on and about. And finally, Gamaliel tells Hezekiah, "Hey, I have a proposal for you. Is there a way that we can um, get something set up for Saul?" Which is where they decide, all right, that he was going to go off to the desert to go and sell like these carpets, as Daniel had mentioned before. And Hezekiah was confused, like, "How could you, when I leave everything you got, all the people and connections that you know, and go live in this very distant place where not even people who we have offered refugees coming in would even want to take this place, right? I don't understand that." And everybody was puzzled, but then there was like a mutual understanding that Emmanuel here describes to us, where everybody understood that being at this place had nothing to do with the materialistic reasons or anything. The situation is not financial, it entails the desire for meditation on the most serious problems of life. We know good and well that the prophets and men of God went to solitary places in order to sense the true inspirations from the Most High before ministering successfully to the sanctity of the Word. So he was going to go. Now, the most important thing, just to finish up this whole plan, conversation, healing session, because it was so important for Saul to have this moment with Gamaliel, was that he was going to work. So even though he was going to go to a distant place, he was going to go and continue to work, but also find himself and reconcile for his past. And that's how it ends, with all of them kind of talking, and they're going to make plans. So that's the summary. So I don't know if we want to open up. I did bring some stuff as well. We have 30 minutes. Yay! Great.
I have a couple of things to say, and I would like to bring some verses from the Bible tonight.
Me too.
It's Yeah, that's nice.
And I
It's
brought the
Oh, that's great. That's great. I was thinking about that as well. It's really interesting for us to see a man who had a very happy and rich life when it comes to all that material perspective, and then he's with this whole new, totally new mental attitude, and he's expecting something else, and but it's not from here. And when he tries to get some comfort from his mentor Gamaliel, we see this wise man telling him that he shouldn't expect an easy life because Christ himself had to face the cross. And in this sense, I would like to read the Gospel of John, chapter 18, verses 33, 36, and 37. Here, I'm gonna read it right now. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said unto him, Art thou the King of the Jews? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end I was born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. This is very interesting and very meaningful because Jesus is telling us that his kingdom is not of this world. And then with these words, Jesus clearly refers to a future life. This is very, very, very clear, which he presents in all circumstances as the goal which humanity must reach and which should constitute man's greatest preoccupation here on earth. That's why we through all the book, when we see Saul of Tarsus confronting those poor, sad, ill people, they were all full of hope. And I just remember that in Peter's letter, at the end of the Bible, Peter in chapter 3, it's the first episode. Peter tells us that we should explain our hope. We should go to all people on earth and explain why we have this hope. I'm going further on the gospel. Indeed, without a future life, there would be no reason to have the majority of these moral precepts. This is why those who do not believe in a future life cannot understand or think the matter foolish, because they imagine that Jesus was only speaking of the present life. This doctrine can therefore be considered as the basis of Christ's teaching. Therefore, it has been placed as the first item in this work. It must be the point to be most closely looked at, as it is the only one that justifies the anomalies and irregularities of earthly life and also shows itself to be in accordance with the justice of God. Another very interesting thing is when Jesus brings us that speech, we see that he's talking about a life that is not here, therefore a future life. And also we see that he is talking about a kingdom that is not about matter, is not about this material perception that we have here. So which where would we find this richness? Which kind of richness is that? We can all recognize that the kingdom of Jesus is not of this world, but could he not also have a kingdom on earth? This is a very interesting question that the gospel brings us, because we do see that Jesus is recognized as a king. He is, but not in this material term. He is recognized as a king when it comes to the moral majesty that he brought us. And this is why this kingdom is always going further. And as spiritists, we believe that it will go forever. The clear and precise idea which can be formed of a future life provides an unshakable faith in what is to come. This faith places enormous consequences upon the moralization of man because it completely changes the point of view as to how life on earth is regarded. For those who place themselves by means of thought in the spiritual life, which is undefined, bodily life becomes a mere temporary stay in an ungrateful country. This is why all those sufferers, they were full of hope because they were expecting something else. And when and I do think that this is what Jesus was talking about when he promised us that he would send us and we would receive a counselor, because it's not easy. And we were talking about this stuff, me and Daniel's wife and this friend of us, Gracie. We were talking about how difficult those dark days they can be, no matter how spiritist we are, no matter how much we have read when it comes to the gospel, spiritism doctrine. It is tough, but it is the counselor. And we have faith because when we see those rules that regulate the spiritual plane and our matter plane here, our material physical plane, when we see them, we trust them. And when we go to this scientific perspective and see that it is true, and we have a strong reason to believe all that. And it is important to say this, because all that, it will be enough for us to not go through those dark days. No, we are going to go through them. They are going to be very harsh, but we are going to believe that there's something more, and that this difficult days, this painful situations that we have to face, they have a major purpose. And in believing that, we face reality with faith. And this is why Simon Peter says in his epistle that we should explain this amount of hope that we have to all people on earth. Do you guys want to say something?
Well, I mean, I think to tie in what you said, could you hear? Yeah. To tie in a little bit of what you said and a little bit about that last part of, Gamaliel's advice to go and work, right? And you said it's there's that physical component, but there's also that working here for the kingdom of God. And it leads us, I think, right into the law of labor, because the spirits kind of teaches a little bit to understand this, right? Question 674 says, is the necessity of labor a law of nature? Okay. Labor is a law of nature and is such a necessity per se, because civilization both increases people's needs and their enjoyment. It obliges them to work more. 675 says, so should we understand labor to entail only material occupations, which is what I think Sal here is starting to see. He has experienced so much working in that material part. Now he's experiencing the other side of the coin. The spirit says no. The spirit labor as much as the body. Every useful occupation is labor, which could mean spiritual. It could mean different components. And the last thing that the spirits say that we can bring up here is, why has labor been imposed on humankind? It's a consequence of corporal nature. It is a means of expiation and at the same time a means of perfecting intelligence. Without labor, we humans would remain in intellectual infancy. So, the spirits give us this great example about the importance of us working this. So, yes, we have our daily jobs, our day to day jobs, but it's also good to note on that aspect, because Gamaliel did tell Saul that you have in that last part, you're going to go, you're going to meditate, you're going to do those things. Now, a shocker comes, I think, when I read this for the first time, like from a literature perspective, was like, wow, this is a very important guy. In our time, he would be like in the White House here. And all of a sudden, it's like he has this huge change. And where did all of that go? And Gamaliel also points out, go back to Jesus. In this book, Our Daily Bread, I know, Shiko has amazing words on number 90, the divine worker, okay, which is a little bit, I think, where we're heading with, yes, with this. You have the Portuguese. I We won't have time to read the whole thing, but it's saying here, it is interesting to note that John does not introduce the Lord, right? As someone who is holding parchments filled with laws and regulations in his hands, nor does he refer to him according to the old Judaic traditions that expected the divine messenger to arrive in a chariot of magnificent glory. Instead, he refers to him as an optimistic, self sacrificing worker, right? And then says here, so, to all of you pursuing earthly endeavors to make things better, the key here says keep your devotion to the cause of the Christ gospel lit in your souls. Let us not be waylaid by difficulties or ingratitude. Let us carry our activities with the precious stimulus of faith, because ahead of us, blessing our humble operation, is that divine worker who will clear the threshing floor of the world. I mean, this is so beautiful and so inspirational, as you're saying, Jerome, how sometimes the difficulties do come in this aspect of our jobs. And what better way to look at Jesus as the biggest role model, how he was in his place and everything. So I started to understand with this a little bit more of Saul's roles and what it meant. So I don't know if Daniel.
Dear,
Yes,
which number was this
it
one that you
was
read?
90.
Okay. Can you bring us number 33? It
Yes.
really connects to what
Okay.
we're
Let us.
talking about.
So 33 is let us also work. Let us work also. Sorry. The first time I read that, I did the same thing. I always okay. Which part would you? Which paragraph?
The third, please.
The one that says the missionaries? Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
the missionaries of the revelation possess no privileges in connection with the personal testimony of their service. The achievements that we would like to point to as a result of grace or some special prerogative are nothing more than these missionaries' profound efforts at learning and applying the teachings of Jesus. Wow.
Read the fifth one, please.
And then he continues in the gospel. We see Magdalene immersed in grievous error, Paul persecuting the ideals of salvation, Peter denying his divine friend, Mark battling his own hesitations. But it is also in the gospel that we see the daughter of Magdala renewed on the redemptive path, the great persecutor converted into a messenger of the good tidings, the fragile disciple led towards spiritual glory, and the vacillating collaborator transformed into an evangelist for the entire human race.
Yes,
Really
this is
beautiful.
really, really pretty because when we're talking about working for Christ and when we look to the law that Jesus brought us in Matthew chapter 22, when he tells us that we should love one another and that we should love God above all and we should love one another. At first, we could think that at the end of the day, we are doing that for ourselves, especially when we are immersed in the Spiritist doctrine, because we could think if I'm doing charity because I want to evolve, at the end of the day, am I doing this for myself and not for others? But the main thing here is that when we work to Christ, when we work on these Christianity pathways here on earth, we do create new sentiments. That's the beauty of it. That's why I asked you to read those paragraphs, because we see people, they were trying to get somewhere else to get another and new feelings, and we saw that they had really strong problems when it comes to this attachment to materialism. But when they reach someone else, someone else's pain, someone else's harsh day, someone else's illness. And when they try to alleviate, to bring some comfort, they create new sentiments in their own spirits. That's the beauty of it. So Jesus was, he is our master. And in this particular lesson, he was very, very smart in telling us that and leaving that as the biggest lesson and the biggest law of all, because this is the way we have to work, not only because we're thinking that we're working for us, because at the end of in those first days, of course we're doing that in a selfish perspective, but when we reiterate the work, when we do it all over and over and over again, we leave those day works, better spirits, a better person. Bro, do you wanna say something?
A friend of mine usually says that we must exercise until goodness become something automatic for us. And you will start doing good without thinking. And so everything you guys said is just fits with what I wanted to point out is that the freedom, that's the freedom that truth brings, and truth is linked to love, and that's the main law of the universe. The truth, I believe, and we have listened to your readings, is the very basis of spiritist doctrine, is that we are spirits. And since we are spirits, all that is materialistic falls down to a second place, maybe a third or a fourth place. And this is all about our spiritual treasures that we must protect and really increase. Um, and that's what we will bring to the spiritual world and to our next lives, reincarnations, if I can say it better. So the freedom comes when we leave matter to wealth and our clothes, our cars, and the size of our houses, and the titles we earn from the world. Is this all creates huge weight for us to carry, and that let's say um, steals our objective over the truth. So we can't focus on spirituality if we are every day thinking about money and being wealthier and being stronger and good looking. How we can focus on being morally better, and we talk pretty much about this at um the meetings with the teenagers and kids from very poor areas here in Brazil. And we point out how can we demand that they are thinking about such deep questions like spirituality and um, being a better being and all about our future and perispirit and scientific things, if they are starving, if they have concerns like, what am I going to eat tonight? Am I going to eat? Is my brother alive? He's he has disappeared for a week, and this is a kid of 8 years old, and How can a person that lives like this focus on something really deeper? You know, we help and we hope to make this happen. We have always to believe, and for that we have to leave behind our materialistic concerns. And I believe that this is the truth, and this is how the new sentiments that João said pops out. How it is built inside of us. That's it.
Yes, that's I think that when we stop our lives to look at these brothers and sisters of ours that are needing basic things like food, water, some place to live, as you brought, that's where our responsibility begins. And we have to, and as spiritists, as Christians, as anybody who have already had access to the Christian speech and has any possibility to help, we need to put ourselves in this place of somebody who has a responsibility with our brothers and sisters. And this that you brought us, this sense that we're spirits, this faith that we have to help others to build, because it is a work that needs a long process in terms of building something. um, and when we look to Saul of Tarsus, and we have only, because of course we're talking about a person who had this beautiful moment with Christ. Christ himself appeared to him. This is a very strong, not everybody can say that, but that does not mean that he is less of a Christian or that he had some privilege, because as we've talked loads of times here, he was always an honest man when it comes to defending whatever he was believing at some point of his life. I do like to think about him and Mary Magdalene as the message that Norah brought us, number 33, brings us this perspective. It pronounces both names, Paul of Tarsus, Mary Magdalene, because they both had to choose between all that material world full of desires fulfilled, full of richness. When it comes to her, she was always able to pick any man she wants, because the man went crazy for her. He himself, and we saw in the book, he had all the ladies crazy for him because he was the almighty Saul of Tarsus. And when we see two people that had so much in the material world, in this sense, this matter perspective, and even though, despite all that, they choose God, we see hearts that are full of faith. And as spiritists, we see spirits that probably were already being prepared to change, to transform the world. In this sense that we're talking here, I want to bring a short message that is.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, dear. No,
I
go ahead,
feel
dear.
real quick, just because we might shift
Sure, sure,
things.
of course.
I found this book. It's a Catholic book. It's Daily Reflections
Beautiful.
of the Mary. It's beautiful. And believe it or not, today I was on the prayer sixth day, and the title was "Helper of Others." Right? And I'm going to read this really quickly because on our scale here too, on our daily activities, if we don't have opportunities to go out and help, every city, every country has different things. But here it's beautiful how helping others can be every day. It says Mary, all her life, reached out to help others with a warm word, a cheerful smile, a gracious act of kindness. Mary made her neighbors feel better. May we be more like her. Do we write a little note of cheer or make a telephone call to show our concern or go to our neighbor in need? There are so many people around us who are lonely. We can make their whole day happier by showing a little interest, by visiting, by saying cheerful words. There's a lot of them here. It says here, we call ourselves Christians, but we don't want to bother to do the work. So, of course, it's given more of the Catholic guidance of like remembering Mary and the help. And so even in this perspective of, our daily lives, simple things like that, we are already working. Sometimes there's a lot of us might have beautiful missions too, that we're physically in a immerse in environments like that. But sometimes even in our own homes, it starts in our own home, with ourselves, with our families, with our friends, with the neighbors, and we create, we're co-creators of this ripple effect of love, right? This is Jesus' love in his work. So thanks, Fred.
No, I love that you brought this more truthful perspective of charity, because a couple of times we think that give money or give material things are all we need to do, and it's not about that at all. And the gospel note, the Spirit's book brings us in the question 888 that the hardest type of charity is the moral charity. It is not easy at all, especially when it comes to making them, those people that are receiving the charity, receive this money or whatever we're giving in a peaceful, honest, just, comfortable way, and not being arrogant when it comes to giving. We have to think about that, when it comes to being charitable with people that live with us, friends on WhatsApp, on Instagram. We have to have this more um, broad sense of being charitable. Um, Still talking about South Tarsus and Mary Magdalene, and how they believed that something better was to come, and how they changed the way they saw the world, and started to acknowledging that those poor, ill, um, not that pretty as they were people, they had something special. And the gospel according to Spiritism brings us a message that I think really suits the study of today, because they bring us some, I don't know when she was a queen, but they bring us a queen of France. And this lady, she thought that she would be received in the spiritual realm as a queen, and the situation was really different. It's a short message I'm gonna read for you guys. It's on chapter 2, and it's in that the instructions from the spirits part of the chapter. Okay, so she tells us this: who better than I to understand the truth of these words of our Lord? My kingdom is not of this world. When on earth I lost myself through pride, who then can understand the total lack of value of the earthly kingdom if not I? What was I able to bring with me of my earthly regality? Nothing, absolutely nothing. And as if to make my lesson more terrible, it did not even accompany me to my tomb. A queen among us men, I thought to enter heaven as a queen. What a disillusion! What a humiliation when, instead of being received as a sovereign, I saw above me, a long way above me, those whom I had judged insignificant, and whom I had despised because they were not of noble blood. Oh, how I understand now the barrenness of honors and splendor so eagerly counted on earth. In order to win a place in this kingdom, it is necessary to show abnegation, humility, benevolence, and charity in its most celestial form. They do not ask who you are nor what position you occupied. Instead, they ask what good you have done, how many tears you have dried. Oh, Jesus, you said that your kingdom was not of this world because it is necessary to suffer in order to reach heaven, and one cannot reach there by means of the steps to a throne. Only the most painful paths leads one to it. Seek your path then, through briars and thorns, and not among us the flowers. Men and women hurry and fro with the hope of acquiring earthly possessions, as if they would be able to keep them forever. However, Here, however, illusions disappear, and it is soon perceived that they had only been chasing shadows. Then it becomes apparent that the only really golden possessions, the only ones which can be made use of in their heavenly home, the only ones which can offer the possibility of entry, have been despised. Have pity on those who have not entered into heaven. Help them with your prayers, because prayer helps mankind approach the Most High. It is what links heaven and earth. Do not forget. A Queen of Friends. This message is so powerful because it summarizes everything we have talked about here tonight. We do have to change the way we see suffer and the way we see richness. Do you guys want to say something before we finish here?
Actually, we have a sister here, Rihanna, who says patience is a great form of charity.
Yes, you're
Thank you,
absolutely
sister.
right. Our sister Rihanna,
Yes,
thank
it's
you, dear.
beautiful. Thank
Yes.
you.
So, do you guys want to say something before we finish, dear?
I want to read a Psalms. I think just because we're on the topic of working. So, yes, we can take this literal of us having our day jobs, which is part of life, right? It's this part. But we can also take this to a deeper understanding as we have kind of dissected more this evening. And the biggest answer when you're in that difficult moment, it is that prayer. And Psalms 90, verses 12 to 17 has a beautiful prayer. We're feeling like, oh my gosh, think about Saul that's about to go to a desert, to a really difficult place. And even Daniel, brother, you were talking to us about those brothers, those scientists, that they themselves had difficulties in modern days. So we can imagine. So taking this, the prayer says, teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Relent, O Lord, how long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad of our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years we have troubled. May your deeds show your servants the splendor to us, your children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest upon us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Amen. So, a beautiful song to pray.
Beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful. Bro, do you want to say something before we finish here?
Um, just that the humble work, and pretty much every work, even if we are paid for it, we can put our hearts in order to serve the other, you know, and it's not because you're getting paid that that work is kind of no, from the spiritual perspective. All that matters is our hearts. Where are we putting our hearts, and where are we uh, putting our treasures? So everything we do thinking about the others. We can have much uh, very complex works, like the famous uh, skyrocket science, but we can do that with the heart, thinking about humanity. And if if we are a carpenter or a weaver, and I like very much, I see on the movies that many countries have this culture of teaching teenagers to work from very early years to start studying, and this is so useful. And I want this very much to my kid. I share this with our other parents, and very most of them don't like this idea. Like, he's not gonna study at the university. He's gonna drop studies, And I don't think so. That's not what happens in way many countries around the world. And I wish I went through that experience. Uh, Learning the basic word, the humble ones, is very important for our in our level of spiritual maturity. This was a great study as always. And I thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. I'm really satisfied. I'm really happy that we're back here studying, talking about this amazing psychograph book, Paul and Stephen. I'm really, really happy. And I want to thank you both, my two great friends that are with me in this journey through this amazing book. Thank you guys so much. Thank everybody that is here with us, that have been here with us. Our sister Rihanna, who sent us a couple of messages. I saw that a couple of people went through here tonight. Yes, thank you, dear, so much. Thank you, everybody that's accompanying us. We're receiving beautiful messages. Thank you guys so much. We're gonna be here next week. Um, Live, and all the days of our studies, they are in all our social media channels. Okay, thank you, my two friends, so much. Thank everybody. See you guys next week. Okay, bye bye.
Bye guys.